The massive crystalline dome stretched endlessly above Ambassador David Stone as he stood alone on the judgment platform, suspended in the center of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. Around him, tier upon tier of alien representatives rose like a living amphitheater, their countless eyes focused on the single human figure below. The air hummed with the whispered conversations of 1,000 different species, each voice carrying the weight of worlds. Stone kept his breathing steady as he surveyed the council chamber. Insectoid creatures with razor-sharp mandibles clicked their disapproval from the upper tiers. Massive reptilian beings coiled their serpentine forms around specially designed perches. Crystalline entities that sparkled like living gems cast prismatic light across the walls. In all his years preparing for this moment, Stone had never imagined the sheer overwhelming presence of so many alien civilizations gathered in one place. High above on the central dais, Supreme Chancellor Vex stood to address the assembly. The towering figure belonged to a species that resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a cathedral, his exoskeleton gleaming with natural armor that had evolved over millions of years. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber without amplification, a biological adaptation that commanded instant attention. The human delegation stands before this council, charged with violations of the Galactic Expansion Treaty, Vex announced, his compound eyes reflecting the light from a dozen different sources. For 2 centuries, your species has claimed star systems without proper authorization. You have built colonies on worlds that should have remained neutral territory. Most concerning of all, you have developed military technology in secret, hidden from council oversight. Stone remained motionless on the platform, though every instinct screamed at him to defend his species. The charges were technically accurate, but they told only part of the story. Earth had indeed expanded rapidly, but always into unclaimed systems. Their technology was advanced, but hardly threatening compared to what he had seen in this very chamber. Furthermore, continued another voice from the assembly, humanity has demonstrated dangerous independence from galactic authority. This speaker was Ambassador Crix of the Hive Collective, a being whose voice came from multiple mouths, speaking in perfect unison. Your species refuses to share technological developments with the greater galactic community. This isolationist behavior threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Stone finally spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design. Honored council members, humanity has violated no laws. We have expanded only into systems that were genuinely unclaimed. We have developed technology through our own research which violates no treaties, and we have maintained peaceful relations with every species we have encountered. Peaceful relations built on deception, hissed General Thack from the military tribunal section. The massive reptilian scales rippled with agitation as he spoke. Our intelligence networks cannot penetrate your systems. Your ships use propulsion methods we cannot analyze. Your colonies appear seemingly overnight without any visible construction process. How do you explain these impossibilities? Stone allowed himself a small smile. General Thack, perhaps your intelligence networks are not as sophisticated as you believe them to be. The chamber erupted in angry chittering roars and electronic screeches. The sheer audacity of a representative from a species barely 2 centuries into space travel, questioning the capabilities of civilizations that had ruled the stars for millions of years, was beyond comprehension. Supreme. Chancellor Vex raised one massive appendage, and silence returned instantly. Ambassador Stone, your species stands at a crossroads. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's future in galactic civilization. Stone felt his heart rate increase, though he kept his expression neutral. This was the moment everything hinged on. Months of preparation, years of careful planning, all leading to the single point in time. The Council finds that humanity's rapid expansion and secretive development pose an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Vex continued. Therefore, we order the following. Immediate withdrawal from all systems colonized in the past 50 years, surrender of half your fleet for technological analysis, and permanent Council oversight of all future human development. The Supreme Chancellor's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Refuse these terms and humanity will face the combined military might of every species in this chamber. Your choice is simple. Submit to Council authority or face extinction. Stone was quiet for a long moment, appearing to consider the ultimatum. In reality, He was activating a subdermal communicator with a sequence of muscle contractions that would be invisible to alien observers. "Admiral Harris," he said finally, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Are you receiving this transmission?" A crisp military voice responded through speakers that materialized from the platform itself. "Copy that, Ambassador. Every word." "Admiral, for the benefit of the Council, would you please clarify the current status of our defensive preparations?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. "All Terra defense protocols are active, sir. Standard patrol deployment is maintaining normal operations." Supreme Chancellor Vex leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the platform. "Standard patrol deployment?" "Ambassador Stone, our intelligence indicates your entire military consists of fewer than 3,000 vessels. The combined Council fleets number over 50,000 ships." Stone's smile widened slightly. "Admiral Harris, I think there may be some confusion about which fleet the Council is asking about." "Ah, my apologies, Ambassador," came the reply, carrying a tone that made several alien representatives shift nervously in their seats. "I was referring to our patrol fleet. The Council seems to be asking about our actual military capabilities." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the ever-present hum of alien whispers ceased entirely. "Admiral, perhaps you could enlighten the Council about our current fleet strength." "Terra Defense Fleet, 3,000 vessels as stated. Colonial Guard, 28,000 ships. Deep Space Navy, 45,000 vessels. Rapid Response Forces, 32,000 ships." Harris paused for effect. "And those are just our conventional forces." The silence in the chamber became oppressive. Several alien representatives were frantically checking their data tablets, trying to reconcile what they were hearing with their intelligence reports. "Conventional forces?" Supreme Chancellor Vex's voice had lost its commanding tone. "Admiral," Stone said pleasantly, "I believe the Council might benefit from a demonstration of our monitoring capabilities." "Understood, Ambassador. Transmitting tactical display now." The air above the platform shimmered and reformed into a three-dimensional hologram, showing the space around the Council headquarters. Dozens of red dots appeared, surrounding the massive station in a perfect sphere. "Those are cloaked surveillance vessels," Admiral Harris explained. "They've been monitoring this session since it began. Standard diplomatic security protocol." Ambassador Crix's multiple voices spoke in unison, though now with a tremor of uncertainty. "Cloaking technology is banned under the Stealth Warfare Prevention Treaty, which specifically prohibits the use of stealth technology for offensive military operations," Stone replied smoothly. "Diplomatic protection is explicitly exempted, as I'm sure your legal advisors can confirm." General Thak was studying the holographic display with growing alarm. "How many ships do you have positioned here?" "Enough," Stone answered simply. The chamber erupted once again, but this time the sounds were different. Where before there had been arrogance and dismissal, now there were undertones of fear and confusion. The most powerful governing body in the galaxy was beginning to realize they might have seriously miscalculated. Supreme Chancellor Vex struggled to maintain control. "The Council will recess to evaluate this new information." "Of course," Stone replied graciously. "Take all the time you need. But Admiral Harris, what's the status of our deep space monitoring network?" "All sensor arrays operational, Ambassador. We're currently tracking 17 different fleet groups moving toward human space. Estimated arrival times range from 4 days to 3 weeks. The chamber fell silent once more, but this silence carried a different quality. It was the silence of predators suddenly realizing they might be facing something far more dangerous than expected. Stone looked around the chamber one final time, meeting the eyes of species that had ruled the galaxy for eons. "Honored Council, when you reconvene, I suggest you consider very carefully whether you truly want to test humanity's defensive capabilities. Because I can assure you, the galaxy will not enjoy the demonstration." As he walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence, Ambassador David Stone allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first phase of humanity's revelation was complete. Now the real game would begin. Deep beneath the Galactic Library's main archives, Scholar Nala frantically searched through data crystals that hadn't been accessed in over 1,000 years. Her crystalline form cast rainbow patterns across the dusty walls as she worked, her research assistant Polk following nervously, behind with scanning equipment they had borrowed without permission. The eye, Emergency session of the Council had been postponed indefinitely after the human ambassador's shocking revelations, and Nala knew that everyone was scrambling to understand how their intelligence networks could have been so completely wrong about humanity's capabilities. As the galaxy's foremost expert on military history, she had been tasked with finding any historical precedent for such massive intelligence failures, but what she was discovering in these forgotten archives was far worse than a simple intelligence failure. Scholar, Polk whispered, his tentacles trembling with anxiety. Are you certain we should be accessing these restricted files? If the archive masters discover us here, they won't, Nala replied, her voice resonating like crystal chimes in the vast underground chamber. These archives haven't been visited in centuries. The masters have forgotten what's stored this deep. She stopped before a massive vault door marked with symbols so ancient that even her extensive education could barely decipher them. The markings seemed to reference something called the First Conflict, or perhaps the Original War. The archaic script was maddeningly unclear. Working together, they managed to activate the ancient access codes, and the vault door slowly ground open with the protest of mechanisms that had been sealed for millennia. Inside, crystalline storage devices lined the walls in perfect rows, each containing data from the galaxy's earliest recorded history. What exactly are we looking for? Polk asked as Nala selected a crystal marked with temporal coordinates from nearly 10,000 years ago. Evidence, she replied grimly, inserting the crystal into a portable reader. The humans demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist. Ships that could appear from nowhere, weapons systems our sensors couldn't analyze, tactics that defied every principle of modern warfare. I need to know if there are any historical precedents. The holographic display that emerged from the crystal made both researchers step backward in shock. The images were grainy and distorted by age, but they clearly showed massive space battles involving weapons and tactics that looked disturbingly familiar. By the eternal light, Polk breathed. This is from the Shadow War. The Shadow War was ancient history, a conflict so old that most species considered it legend rather than fact. According to the few surviving records, it had involved the complete disappearance of several galaxy-spanning civilizations, leaving behind only empty star systems and mysterious debris fields. Nala fast-forwarded through the crystal's contents, searching for specific details. When she found what she was looking for, her entire crystalline matrix went rigid with shock. The hologram showed a fleet engagement that defied every law of physics she understood. Ships moved with impossible coordination, weapons bent space itself, and the tactics displayed a level of sophistication that made modern military academies look primitive by comparison. Leading this impossible fleet were vessels with a distinctive design, sleek, predatory forms that looked nothing like the bulky warships favored by other galactic civilizations. Those ships, Polk said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, they look exactly like human vessels, Nala finished. They look exactly like human vessels. She quickly pulled up another crystal, then another. The pattern that emerged was undeniable and terrifying. Throughout the ancient records, whenever the galaxy faced existential threats, the same ships appeared. The same impossible tactics. The same devastating effectiveness. This can't be correct, Polk protested, his tentacles writhing with distress. Humans only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. These records are 10,000 years old. Nala was already moving deeper into the archives, following connections that filled her with growing dread. She found what she was looking for in a crystal marked post-conflict analysis and a detailed study of the aftermath of the Shadow War. The hologram that emerged showed a star system that had been completely sterilized, planets reduced to glowing slag, space stations vaporized, debris fields that stretched across light years. At the center of this devastation, a single message beacon continued broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that came from the beacon was unmistakably human, speaking in an archaic dialect of galactic standard that predated most current civilizations by thousands of years. Attention, any survivors. The Devourer fleet has been eliminated. Threat assessment 0. Human Deep Space Command is implementing Protocol 9. Complete intelligence suppression and strategic withdrawal. All evidence of our civilization's participation in this conflict will be removed from galactic databases within 48 hours. The message continued with chilling matter-of-factness. To any species that discovers this beacon, We are returning to the Sol system to monitor galactic development. We will not interfere with natural evolution unless extinction-level threats emerge. Do not attempt to locate us. Do not attempt to contact us. We will be watching from the shadows." The beacon fell silent and the hologram faded, leaving Nala and Poke alone in the ancient vault with the weight of 10 millennia of hidden history. "Scholar," Poke said finally, his voice shaking, "what does this mean for the current crisis?" Nala was already pulling more crystals with frantic urgency. "It means the Council has made the most catastrophic error in galactic history. Humans didn't develop advanced technology in the past 2 centuries. They've been the galaxy's hidden guardians for 10,000 years. The evidence was overwhelming once she knew what to look for. The Crimson Plague that had threatened to consume all organic life mysteriously ended when unknown vessels deployed weapons that could sterilize entire star systems without harming the native populations. The machine uprising that had nearly converted all matter into self-replicating robots stopped by tactics so sophisticated that surviving analysts still couldn't understand how it had been accomplished. The void cultists who had attempted to summon entities from parallel dimensions, eliminated by ships that seemed to exist in multiple realities. Simultaneously, every galactic extinction event for 10 millennia had been quietly resolved by the same hidden force. But why? Polk asked, his tentacles barely maintaining their grip on the scanning equipment. Why hide their true nature? Why pretend to be a young species just discovering space travel? Nala activated one final crystal, this one labeled Strategic Psychological Operations. The hologram showed human military planners from thousands of years ago, discussing long-term strategy with a sophistication that made current war colleges look like children's games. The greatest advantage, one of the ancient human strategists was explaining, is enemy ignorance of your true capabilities. Allow them to believe you are weak until the moment you choose to demonstrate your strength. By then the psychological impact will be far greater than any physical attack. Another human nodded approvingly. The galaxy must believe it can defend itself. If they knew we were protecting them, they would become dependent rather than developing their own strength. When the next major threat emerges, and mathematical models confirm it will emerge, they need to be strong enough to fight alongside us, not hide behind us. And if they become the threat themselves? The first strategist smiled with predatory confidence. Then they discover why humanity has survived 10,000 years of galactic conflicts without losing a single major engagement. The crystal ended, and Nala finally understood the true scope of what the Council had unleashed. Polk, we need to contact the emergency session immediately. Scholar, they'll demand to know how we obtained classified historical data. Then we tell them the truth, Nala said firmly, copying the crystals onto portable storage. Because in approximately 72 hours, 17 different attack fleets are going to engage, the most dangerous military force in galactic history, a force that has been protecting all of us for 10 millennia while we remained completely ignorant of our own dependence on their protection. As they rush through the ancient corridors toward the surface, Nala's crystalline form flickered with patterns of deep alarm. The galaxy had declared war on its own protectors, beings who had been defending galactic civilization since before most current species had even evolved intelligence. And from everything she had just discovered, humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for 10,000 years. The most advanced military civilization in galactic history was about to stop hiding, and the universe would never be the same. Admiral Sarah Kane stood in the command center of Deep Station Alpha, a facility that officially didn't exist in any galactic database, watching holographic displays that showed the true extent of humanity's hidden infrastructure. Around her, officers who had spent their entire careers operating in absolute secrecy prepared for a moment they had trained for but hoped would never come. The massive command center stretched for kilometers beneath the surface of an unremarkable asteroid in the Oort cloud, its walls lined with quantum processors that monitored every major civilization in the galaxy. For the past 72 hours, since Ambassador Stone's confrontation with the Council, those processors had been tracking the largest military mobilization in galactic history. "Status report," Kane commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in wars the galaxy had forgotten existed. "All Deep Fleet assets are responding to awakening protocols," reported Commander Torres, her fingers moving across holographic interfaces that controlled weapon systems capable of reshaping reality itself. The Ghost Squadron has completed stealth positioning around the Arcturus system. The Phantom Division is moving into position near the galactic core. And Admiral? She paused, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and dread. The Titan fleet has begun emerging from the deep storage facilities. Kane nodded, though the weight of what they were about to reveal made her feel every one of her 80 years. The Titan fleet represented humanity's most carefully guarded secret. Ships so massive they could serve as mobile civilizations, carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire galactic arms. What's the status of the approaching Council fleets? 17 attack groups as predicted, Torres replied, pulling up a tactical display that showed red icons converging on human space from every direction. Total vessel count, approximately 290,000 ships. They're moving in coordinated waves. This has been planned for months, possibly years. Of course it has, Kane said grimly. We've been monitoring their classified communications since they first admitted us to the Council 50 years ago. The moment humanity demonstrated any capability beyond what they considered appropriate for a young species, the militant factions began preparing for this conflict. A new hologram materialized as Admiral Cross joined the conference from his flagship in the Vega system. Sarah, the ancient protocols have been activated. Full authorization, no restrictions whatsoever. Kane felt a chill run down her spine. The ancient protocols hadn't been invoked since the Shadow War 10,000 years ago, when humanity had been forced to eliminate 3 galaxy-spanning civilizations to prevent a cascade extinction event. Who authorized it? The Senate. Unanimous vote after reviewing the intercepted communications. Cross's expression was hard as granite. Sarah, they're not planning conquest or subjugation. They're planning complete extermination. Every human world, every human colony, every human ship. Total species genocide. On the main display, intercepted alien communications began playing. The voices belonged to various council members speaking in languages they believed no human could understand. The human contamination must be completely sterilized, Supreme Chancellor Vex was saying. Their existence represents an unacceptable threat to the natural galactic order. Agreed, came General Thack's response. Their technology advancement rate is impossible to control. We cannot allow a species that hides its true capabilities to continue existing anywhere in the galaxy. Every human settlement must be reduced to atoms, added Ambassador Crix. Their technological development patterns are too dangerous. Complete extermination is the only solution. Kane closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of protecting an ungrateful galaxy. They had eliminated threats that would have consumed every living thing in the universe, prevented extinction events that would have reduced all matter to gray goo, and maintained peace through strength that required absolute secrecy. This was their reward. Admiral, Commander Torres said quietly, incoming transmission from Earth. Priority Alpha classification. The hologram shifted to show President Williams, speaking from the war room deep beneath the Global Defense Headquarters. Admiral Kane, the decision has been reached. Humanity will not accept extinction quietly. You are authorized to reveal the complete scope of our capabilities. Understood, Madam President. How much of the truth should we disclose? All of it. Every ship, every weapon, every technology we've kept hidden for 10 millennia. If they want to see what humanity is truly capable of when we stop pretending to be harmless, show them everything. The transmission ended and Kane turned to address her command staff. Around the room, officers who had maintained humanity's greatest secret for their entire careers prepared to finally step into the light of galactic awareness. Ladies and gentlemen, for 10,000 years, we have protected this galaxy from threats they couldn't even comprehend. We fought wars in parallel dimensions, eliminated species that consumed entire realities, and maintained peace through methods they would consider impossible. She paused, meeting each officer's eyes in turn. Today that mission changes. Today we stop hiding. She activated the quantum communicator, sending simultaneous transmissions to every human fleet, installation, and black site across the galaxy and beyond. This is Admiral Kane, Deep Fleet Command. Authorization Omega 777. Execute Revelation Protocol. Repeat, execute Revelation Protocol. Across human space and in dimensions the galaxy didn't know existed, ancient installations began powering up. Cloaked shipyards that had operated for millennia dropped their concealment fields. Fleet groups that had remained hidden in the spaces between realities began transitioning back to normal space. Time to full emergence? Kane asked. Titan fleet will reach Terra space in 4 hours, Torres reported, her voice filled with anticipation. The Wraith squadrons are already in position. And, Admiral, she smiled for the first time in weeks, the Dreadnought Corps is requesting permission to drop dimensional concealment protocols. Kane almost smiled in return. The Dreadnought Corps consisted of ships so large they existed partially in parallel dimensions to avoid detection, each one capable of engaging entire fleets single-handedly. Permission granted. All concealment protocols are now suspended galaxy-wide. On the main display, the tactical picture began transforming as humanity's true military might revealed itself. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly blazed with ship signatures. Small patrol groups revealed themselves to be massive armadas. Individual monitoring stations unfolded into sprawling fortress complexes. Admiral, a young lieutenant whispered, seeing the complete picture for the first time. How many ships do we actually command? Kane consulted her primary display, watching as the numbers climbed steadily. Current operational count, 468,000 vessels in normal space. That doesn't include the experimental division, ships still under construction, or the fleets operating in parallel dimensions. The lieutenant's face went pale. We outnumber them significantly. Numbers mean nothing without proper application, Kane cautioned. They have quantity and conventional tactics. We have technology that transcends their understanding of physics, strategic experience spanning 10 millennia, and most importantly, she gestured to the tactical display, complete knowledge of every system they're attacking. Commander Torres looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving ultimatum demands from the approaching fleets. They're ordering immediate surrender and submission to processing facilities. Kane's expression hardened. Processing facilities. According to their transmissions, all humans are to be transferred to examination centers for technological extraction and biological disposal. The command center fell into absolute silence. Finally, Kane activated the response array. This is Admiral Sarah Kane, Commanding Officer of Humanity's Deep Space Defense Network. To all approaching hostile forces, you have entered human space with declared intent to commit xenocide against our species. This is your final warning. Withdraw immediately or face consequences beyond your ability to comprehend. She paused, then added with quiet menace. You demanded to see what humanity truly is. In approximately 3 hours, you will receive that education. I suggest you use the time to reconsider your choices. The transmission ended and Kane turned to her staff. Initiate Phase 2. I want every approaching fleet to understand exactly what they've chosen to face. As her officers began implementing plans that had been refined for 10,000 years, Kane looked out at the stars through the station's observation dome. Humanity had spent 10 millennia protecting the galaxy from the shadows, eliminating threats that would have consumed all life and maintaining peace through strength that required absolute secrecy. Now it was time to step into the light and remind the galaxy why they had been so careful to remain hidden. The most advanced military civilization in universal history was about to reveal itself, and the cosmos would never be the same. The galaxy had declared war on its protectors. Soon they would learn why that was the most catastrophic mistake in the history of intelligent life. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the HDS Vengeance, watching through reinforced viewports as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The massive warship was emerging from a quantum tunnel, technology the galaxy believed was theoretically impossible, directly into the heart of the Perseus system where the largest Council attack fleet was preparing for their final assault on Earth. Around her, officers who had spent decades fighting invisible wars prepared for the moment when humanity would finally reveal the truth about their place in the galactic hierarchy. Emergence successful, reported Lieutenant Jackson from the navigation console. All Titan Division vessels have materialized on target coordinates. We are exactly where we need to be. Through the viewports, Morgan could see them, vessels so massive they defied comprehension. The Vengeance alone stretched 30 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon systems that existed in no galactic database. Around her, 24 more Titan-class dreadnoughts hung in space like awakened gods, their hulls gleaming with energy that seemed to pulse with its own life. Captain, Commander Park called from the tactical station. "The Council fleet is responding to our arrival." They appear. Confused would be an understatement. On the main screen, Admiral Korath of the Draconian Empire appeared, his scaled features contorting with disbelief as he took in the scope of what had just materialized in his midst. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at control panels, clearly struggling to process what their sensors were telling them. Unknown vessels. Korath's voice carried the arrogance of a species that had dominated space for millennia. "You are interfering with a lawful Council military operation. Identify yourselves immediately or face the consequences." Morgan smiled with predatory satisfaction. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the human deep space Titan Vengeance. Admiral Korath, you are illegally occupying human space with declared intent to commit species-wide genocide. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures." Korath's reptilian features twisted into what might have been laughter. "Human vessel, you are outnumbered 300 to 1. Your 25 ships against my 75,000. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift." "Admiral," Morgan replied pleasantly, "you seem to be operating under the misconception that we came here to fight your fleet." She paused for dramatic effect. "We came here to demonstrate why fighting us was never an option." Behind Admiral Korath, his tactical officers were frantically studying their displays. One of them approached with obvious distress, whispering something that made all of Korath's eyes widen simultaneously. "Impossible," Korath said, his voice losing its commanding tone. "Our analysis indicates each of your vessels possesses more destructive capability than my entire fleet combined." "Your analysis is conservative," Morgan confirmed. "Beginning demonstration now." She nodded to Commander Park, who selected a target, a massive asteroid roughly the size of Earth's moon, positioned safely away from any inhabited areas. "Firing quantum disintegration array," Park announced. Space around the Vengeance shimmered as energy collectors that had been passively drawing power from the system's star suddenly discharged through the ship's primary weapon system. A beam of pure energy that looked like liquid starlight reached across the void and touched the asteroid. For a moment, nothing appeared to happen. Then the asteroid simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, erased from reality so completely that the space it had occupied registered as perfectly empty vacuum. The Council fleet's communication channels erupted in panic and disbelief. They deleted a moon-sized asteroid. How is that even possible? "All ships retreat." Immediate retreat. But Admiral Korath, despite his shock, was made of sterner material than his subordinates. "This is some form of advanced illusion technology. Humans cannot possess weapons that violate the fundamental laws of physics." He opened a channel to his fleet commanders. "All vessels prepare to engage. Target their lead ship with everything we have." Morgan sighed deeply. "Admiral Korath, I attempted to resolve this peacefully. Commander Park, activate defensive systems." Around the Vengeance, space began to ripple as the Titan's true defensive capabilities came online. When the Council fleet opened fire, thousands of energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles converging on the human ships. The weapons simply vanished into what appeared to be tears in the fabric of reality itself. "Dimensional shielding active," Park reported with professional calm. "All incoming fire is being redirected to uninhabited space approximately 5 light-years away." "Captain," Lieutenant Jackson called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Kane." The command display activated to show Admiral Kane aboard Deep Station Alpha, with tactical readouts showing the positions of all 17 Council attack fleets spread across human space. "Captain Morgan, how is the demonstration proceeding?" "The Draconians are being stubborn, Admiral. They seem convinced we're using some form of advanced deception technology." Kane nodded with grim satisfaction. "Show them the real fleet. All of it." Morgan felt a thrill of anticipation run through her. For her entire career, she had served aboard ships that officially didn't exist, fighting wars against threats the galaxy couldn't imagine. Today, finally, the truth would be revealed. "Full revelation authorized," she announced to her bridge crew. "Transmit the awakening signal." The Vengeance broadcast a coded transmission that traveled instantly through quantum entanglement networks woven into the fabric of space itself. Across the galaxy, the signal reached every human vessel, installation, and hidden facility that had remained concealed for 10,000 years. Admiral Korath was still trying to understand why his weapons weren't working when space around his fleet began to transform. Ships appeared, not approaching from distant points, but materializing directly from concealment fields that had rendered them completely undetectable to every known form of sensor technology. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of human vessels became visible, sleek destroyers that moved like living things, massive cruisers that dwarfed space stations, carrier ships that could have served as mobile cities. Fleet groups that had been hiding in parallel dimensions for centuries dropped their concealment and revealed themselves to normal space. Tactical display, full spectrum analysis, Morgan ordered. The main screen showed the true scope of what Admiral Korath was facing. His 75,000 ships were now surrounded by over 300,000 human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. And these weren't just superior in numbers, they were superior in every conceivable way. Admiral Korath, Morgan said pleasantly, I'd like you to meet the human Deep Space Navy. We've been protecting this galaxy for 10,000 years. Every extinction-level threat that mysteriously disappeared, every reality-consuming entity that was inexplicably eliminated, every time the universe survived something it shouldn't have, that was us. Korath's face had gone completely pale. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks are the most sophisticated in the galaxy. Detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Morgan finished. Did you really believe a species capable of quantum manipulation couldn't fool primitive surveillance systems? On the tactical display, the other 16 Council fleets were experiencing identical revelations as human forces revealed themselves throughout the galaxy. Every attack group found themselves outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by ships that shouldn't exist, Captain, Commander Park said quietly. We're receiving surrender requests from 67 different fleet commanders. Also, several Council species are attempting to recall their forces entirely. Too late for that, Kane's voice came through the communication system. They declared their intention to commit total genocide. That cannot be overlooked. Her tone became ice cold. Captain Morgan, demonstrate why humanity has never lost a major conflict in 10,000 years. Morgan turned to her weapons officer. Target selection? Admiral Korath's flagship, Park replied. Non-lethal demonstration. Firing gravitational manipulation beam. This time, instead of destroying its target, the Vengeance's weapon reached out and gently lifted Admiral Korath's massive battleship, a vessel that massed over 100 million tons, and moved it 5,000 kilometers to the right as easily as a child relocating a toy. The Council, fleet's communications fell completely silent. Admiral Korath, Morgan said into that silence, you wanted to see what humanity was hiding. We've been concealing our true capabilities not from weakness, but from respect for galactic civilization. We could have conquered the universe 10,000 years ago. Instead, we chose to protect it from shadows. She let that statement resonate through every communication channel. But today, the galaxy declared war on its guardians. Today, you learn what happens when humanity stops restraining itself. Throughout the system, human ships began demonstrating technologies that redefined the boundaries of possibility. Vessels that could manipulate gravity itself. Weapons that fired concentrated stellar matter. This is just one system, Admiral, Morgan continued. These demonstrations are occurring simultaneously at all 17 of your attack points. Every Council fleet that came to destroy humanity is Lear. 8 months after the Revelation War, Ambassador David Stone stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber, but everything had fundamentally changed. The crystalline halls that had once echoed with arrogant proclamations now hummed with nervous whispers. Where thousands of alien representatives had once sat in judgment of humanity, now fewer than half that number remained, and those who did attend watched him with expressions ranging from awe to barely concealed terror. The throne that had belonged to Supreme Chancellor Vex sat empty. The former leader was currently in a medical facility, recovering from a complete psychological breakdown that had occurred when he learned the true scope of humanity's capabilities. Several other original Council members had suffered similar fates, their minds unable to process the reality that their entire civilization existed only because humanity had chosen to allow it. In Vex's place sat Chancellor Prime Arius of the Centauran Confederacy, a species that had wisely remained neutral during the brief but decisive conflict. Her avian features showed the strain of presiding over a galaxy, trying to come to terms with 10 millennia of carefully orchestrated deception. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Stone," she announced, her voice carrying harmonics of respect that would have been unthinkable 8 months ago. Stone stepped forward to the central platform, no longer a defendant but something far more complex. Part diplomat, part conqueror, part disappointed parent returning to find his children had burned down the house in his absence. "Thank you, Chancellor Prime. Before we begin today's session, I want to address what I know is foremost in everyone's minds." He gestured toward the transparent dome, through which the assembled representatives could see humanity's new embassy vessel, the HDS Concordia. At 20 kilometers in length, it was actually one of the smaller ships in the human fleet, but its presence served as a constant reminder of the forces that now openly patrolled galactic space. 8 months ago, 17 council fleets comprising nearly 300,000 vessels attempted to commit genocide against the human species. Today those fleets no longer exist. The statement sent waves of unease through the chamber. The captured vessels had been completely recycled. Their crews returned to their homeworlds with new perspectives on their place in the galactic hierarchy. However, Stone continued, humanity has no interest in domination for its own sake. We never have. For 10,000 years we possessed the capability to rule this galaxy absolutely. Instead we chose to protect it from the shadows, allowing your civilizations to develop naturally while ensuring your survival. Ambassador Crix, one of the few original council members still in office, raised a trembling appendage. "Ambassador Stone, the council requires clarification. Why? Why conceal your true nature for so long? Why allow us to believe we were your equals?" Stone was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because, Ambassador Crix, genuine strength isn't measured by your ability to dominate others. It's measured by your wisdom in knowing when not to use your power. We wanted this galaxy to grow strong independently, to develop solutions to its own problems, to create a civilization worthy of protection." "And now?" asked General Thack's replacement, a much younger Ursine who had been promoted after his predecessor's complete mental collapse upon witnessing human military capabilities. "Now we find ourselves in the unfortunate position of having to actively manage galactic affairs, instead of simply observing them. The recent conflict demonstrated that this galaxy cannot be trusted with complete autonomy." Stone activated a holographic display that showed the new galactic map. Large sections of space were now marked in blue, regions under direct human administration. The Council will continue to govern galactic civilization, but with significant modifications. Critical strategic systems will be administered directly by human forces. All military research and development will be subject to human oversight. Any future territorial disputes will be mediated by human arbitrators. The chamber erupted in protests, but Stone raised a hand and the voices ceased immediately. Another profound change from 8 months ago. "These measures are not punitive," he continued. "They are protective. The galaxy has proven it cannot handle unrestricted military development without attempting genocide against species that inconvenience them." "You're treating us like children," protested Ambassador Nala, the crystalline scholar who had discovered the truth about humanity's hidden history. "Because that's precisely what you are," Stone replied without hostility. "Compared to humanity's 10,000-year civilization, most of your species achieved spaceflight last week. You've had centuries to prove you could handle interstellar politics responsibly, and your response was attempted genocide." He activated another display, this one showing technological development charts and trade agreements. However, species that demonstrate wisdom and peaceful intentions will be eligible for significant benefits, advanced energy systems, medical breakthroughs, and eventually some of our defensive technologies. This immediately captured the attention of every representative in the chamber. Ambassador Zek of the Aquarian Collective leaned forward eagerly. "What would be required to qualify for such technological transfers?" "Peaceful resolution of all current territorial disputes, complete elimination of weapons of mass destruction, and most importantly, a demonstrated commitment to galactic stability rather than species-centric expansion." Stone gestured, and the hologram showed thriving trade networks, collaborative research stations, and joint exploration missions. "This is the galaxy humanity envisioned when we first chose to remain hidden. A civilization that works together instead of constantly preparing for war against its neighbors." "And if species refuse these conditions?" asked Chancellor Prime Arius. Stone's expression hardened noticeably. "Then they join the Void Devourers, the Hive Mind Collective, and 23 other extinct civilizations that chose to threaten galactic stability. Humanity has been extraordinarily patient with galactic civilization. That patience has limits. A new voice spoke from the assembly. Ambassador Rex of the Terran colonies, one of the few non-human representatives who had supported humanity during the crisis. Ambassador Stone, what about species that stood with humanity? Those who refused to participate in the genocide fleets? Stone's demeanor brightened considerably. Those civilizations will find themselves with expanded territories, preferential trading status, and immediate access to human defensive technologies. Loyalty and wisdom are never forgotten. He activated displays showing expansion grants, technology transfers, and joint development projects, benefits that made the consequences of opposing humanity seem astronomically costly in comparison. The choice facing this galaxy is straightforward, Stone concluded. You can embrace this new reality and prosper under human guidance, or you can continue down the path of destructive competition and face the consequences. But understand this clearly. Humanity will never again allow our protection of galactic civilization to be repaid with attempted genocide. Chancellor Prime Arius stood slowly. The Council will require time to deliberate these proposals. Of course, you have 48 hours. Ambassador, surely more time is needed for proper consultation with our homeworlds. You had 10,000 years to learn how to coexist peacefully. Stone interrupted. You used that time to plan genocide against your protectors. 48 hours is generous. As he turned to leave, Stone paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. For 10 millennia we watched over this galaxy, eliminated threats you couldn't imagine, and asked nothing in return except the opportunity to see galactic civilization grow strong enough to eventually stand beside us as equals. His voice carried genuine sadness. You chose a different path. Now you'll live with the consequences of that choice. But remember this. When the next existential threat emerges from beyond our galaxy and mathematical models confirm it will emerge, humanity will still be here to face it. Because protecting life is who we are, not what we do. The galaxy will survive just as it always has. But it will survive because humanity ensures its survival, not because you've earned that survival through your own strength. As he walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber, Stone reflected on the irony. Humanity had hidden for 10,000 years to avoid exactly this situation, being forced to openly govern a galaxy that couldn't govern itself. Outside the chamber, Admiral Kane waited with a knowing expression. How did they receive the new terms? Stone sighed deeply. About as well as expected. They're still processing the reality that their entire civilization exists at our discretion. And the new governmental structure will be implemented whether they agree or not. The galaxy had its chance at self-determination. They chose genocide. Stone looked up at the stars where human ships maintained their no longer hidden vigil. Now they'll learn what benevolent hegemony looks like. Do you think they'll adapt? As they walked toward the shuttle that would return them to the Concordia, Stone reflected on the transformation. Humanity had hidden for 10,000 years to preserve the illusion of Galacti.